When I married Claire, I didn't know I was marrying a past I couldn't outrun. Not because of her, but because of Evan, her son, my new stepson. 19, quiet, distant, beautiful in a way that made you look twice, even if you tried not to. And from the first night I moved in, I knew something was off. Not wrong exactly, just intense. Like something under the surface was watching me, waiting. I just didn't know yet that he was the one I should have been afraid of, or that he'd be the one to save me. We lived in a small town outside Santa Rosa, California. A 2-story house with a wide yard and white shutters Claire refused to repaint. She liked things looking classical. I liked things simple. But Claire wasn't simple. She was a storm with lipstick. Gorgeous. Older than me by 10 years. And drank more wine than water. Our marriage was fast. One of those whirlwind things that feel like a dream, until you wake up and realize no one around you actually knows each other. Not really. And Claire? She never talked about Evan much. Just said he was moody, artsy, kept to himself. He was staying with his dad out of state when we married. Showed up weeks later without notice. Dropped off by a friend, no bags, no hug. Just walked inside like a ghost returning to a place that never really felt like home. Our first real conversation was in the kitchen. I was making late-night coffee. Claire had passed out drunk on the couch. Again, Evan walked in barefoot, shirtless, eyes red from either sleep or crying. I couldn't tell. He opened the fridge. Shut it. Didn't take anything. I said, "You hungry?" He looked at me, jaw clenched, then finally asked, "You in love with her?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" He stared. "My mom. Are you in love with her, or was she just convenient?" That was the first time I realized how sharp he was. How broken, too. I thought I was. I said honestly. He gave the smallest laugh. "Yeah," he said. "That's what they all say." After that, we didn't talk much. But I noticed him. How he stayed up late painting in the garage with his music too loud. How he winced when Claire yelled. How he flinched when someone touched him too suddenly. And I started to see the cracks in Claire. The way she belittled him. Ignored him. Used him to feel better about her own mess. And I hated how long it took me to really look. One night, maybe 2 months into living there, Claire threw a party. Big one. Loud music. Too much wine. Too many strangers. I hated it. Evan disappeared after 30 minutes. I checked his room. Empty. Garage? Locked. I slipped out the back door, past a line of parked cars, and into the woods just past the yard. And there, in a little clearing lit only by moonlight, he was sitting on a fallen log, knees pulled to his chest, hoodie on, eyes glistening. He didn't look surprised when I sat next to him, just tired. He said nothing for a long time. Then, she told me I ruined her marriage with my dad, said I made him leave. My heart broke a little in that moment. She lied. I said quietly. He nodded. I know, but when you hear something enough, you start wondering if it's true anyway. That was the first night I stayed up with him. No words, just silence and company. We didn't go back inside until the party was over. Claire was passed out again. He went up the stairs without a word. But when he looked back over his shoulder, he smiled. Just once. And it undid something in me I hadn't even realized was twisted shut. A week later, it happened again. Same pattern. Claire drunk. Me restless. Evan gone from the house, but not from my thoughts. I found him outside, this time in the garage. Canvas in front of him. Paint-stained fingers. A single light bulb swinging overhead. The painting? It was a man standing in storm. Face turned up. Mouth open like he was trying to swallow the lightning. I asked him who it was. He said, "I don't know. I think it's me." We talked more after that. Slowly. At night. Always while Claire was drunk or asleep. We were careful. Nothing happened. Not physically. But something in me started to shift. My heart. Noticed him before my mind gave permission. I hated myself for it. And yet, I also hated how alive he made me feel. How seen. Then came that night. Claire drank more than usual. Screamed about bills, taxes, how Evan never contributed anything. Threw a plate, slammed the door, and passed out face first on the living room rug. I cleaned the glass. Evan watched from the stairs, arms folded. When I finished, he nodded toward the backyard. I followed him out without thinking. And what happened between us that night? It didn't cross a line, but it rewrote one. We stayed outside all night. He cried a little. I listened a lot. At one point, I put my arm around him. He didn't pull away. At another, he rested his head against my shoulder. He said, "You don't belong with her." I said nothing. He whispered, "You see me?" And I've never had that before. And somewhere before the sun rose, I knew I was falling. And if I didn't stop it now, I might never want to. Before we continue, if you made it this far, this story clearly speaks to you. But let me be very clear. If you're not part of the gay community, or you don't support it, or these kind of stories make you uncomfortable, this channel is not for you. But if you're here because these real, raw, emotional stories hit something deep inside, then subscribe. Because when we hit 1,000 subs, something big is coming only for those who stayed with us. Drop a comment if this story is hitting you hard. Like the video if you want more stories like this. And share it with a friend who gets it. We see you, and we're just getting started. To be continued in part 2. The connection deepens. Lines blur, and Tyler must choose between comfort and something dangerously close to the truth. The morning after we spent the night outside, I didn't sleep. Evan had gone in just before sunrise, quiet, almost ashamed, and I watched him walk through the sliding glass door like he was returning from a war no one saw but him. I waited until the house was silent before coming in. Claire was still snoring on the couch. Empty wine bottles on the floor. Makeup smudged across her cheek. For a second, I felt nothing, not even guilt, just the sense that something in me had been emptied out during the night, and in its place was Evan, not by choice, not lust, but that quiet, aching pull you feel when you see someone for who they really are and want to protect them anyway. He didn't come down for breakfast. Claire woke around noon, moody and hungover. She lit a cigarette by the stove and muttered, "I heard you were out late." I blinked. "Who told you that?" She shrugged. "I noticed things." She didn't press, but her tone, it lingered, like she was poking at something she hadn't fully figured out, but wanted to break anyway. That afternoon, I found Evan in the garage. He was painting again, this time slower, the colors darker. He didn't look up when I entered, but he didn't tell me to leave either. After a while, I sat on the old stool beside him and watched. He said, "She's always known how to hurt me without raising her voice." I didn't ask who she was. He continued, "It's not even what she says. It's the way she looks at me, like I'm a burden she regrets." I swallowed hard. "You're not." "I know," he said, "but knowing doesn't make the feeling disappear." I reached out and gently touched his hand, just for a second. He flinched, then paused, and didn't pull away. We stayed like that for a moment longer than we should have, but not a second longer than I needed. Later that night, after Claire went to bed, I heard a knock at my door. It was soft, hesitant. I opened it to find Evan standing there, hoodie on, barefoot again. "Can't sleep," he whispered. I stepped aside. He didn't come in. He just stood there, eyes tired. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. Can I sit with you?" I nodded, and for the next 2 hours, we sat on the edge of my bed, not touching, not talking much, just existing in the same quiet. His head leaned on my shoulder by the time 3 a.m. rolled around. He fell asleep like that, and I let him, because I knew sometimes love starts with just being the one who stays. The next morning, he was gone before Claire woke up, and for a while it became a pattern. Late night knocks, quiet sharing, small gestures that said more than words ever could. He never crossed a line, but we kept walking closer to it. One evening, after another one of Claire's wine-fueled breakdowns, Evan came to the backyard while I was sitting on the steps. He sat next to me, knees touching. "She asked me today if I hated you," he said quietly. My heart jumped. "What did you say?" He gave a soft laugh. "I told her hate is too loud of a word for how I feel. I stared at him. And how do you feel? He looked down, then up, his voice barely a whisper. Safe. With you. Something cracked in me right then. Not lust, not fantasy, but a kind of helpless, overwhelming tenderness I didn't know I was capable of. I reached up and brushed his hair back gently, like I was afraid he might break. He closed his eyes and leaned into the touch. But that moment was broken by a door slamming open inside. Claire's voice. Evan. Tyler. We jumped. I pulled my hand back like I touched fire. He stood quickly, eyes wide. I should go. He vanished through the back door. Claire came stumbling out with a wine glass in one hand and her phone in the other. You two out here having secrets? Her voice was playful, but her eyes? They were sharp, too sharp. I kept my face still. Just needed air. Air's overrated, she muttered, sitting beside me. You know, I used to love this backyard. Before everything got complicated, I didn't answer, because I already knew what she was trying to say without saying it. She'd seen something. She didn't know exactly what, but she smelled smoke. And Claire Ridley had a long history of burning things down just to prove she wasn't crazy. The next night, Evan didn't knock. And the one after that, I didn't sleep either night. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that he just needed space. But I knew better. On the third night, I heard the front door slam. I got up, heart pounding, and found Claire in the hallway, smiling. She lit a cigarette, told him to stay with his dad for a while. She said casually, thought we could use the space. My stomach dropped. You sent him away? She exhaled smoke. I sent him home. You are his home. I snapped. She blinked. That hit harder than I expected. No, Tyler, she said slowly. You are, and that's the problem. She walked off, leaving me with nothing but the sound of the clock ticking too loud and a lump in my throat I couldn't swallow. I didn't know where Evan was, or what Claire had said to push him. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. To be continued in part 3. Evan is gone, but the connection lingers. And when secrets are forced into the light, love might be the only truth left standing. It had been 11 days. 11 days without a word from Evan. No texts, no calls, just silence. The kind that sinks into your bones like winter. The kind that makes you question if what you felt was real. Claire acted like nothing happened. She smiled more, drank less, or at least more discreetly. She cooked dinner twice that week. Even asked me if I wanted to go out of town for the weekend. But everything about her felt like a performance. A careful, sober act she rehearsed just long enough to convince the world she was fine. But I wasn't. I wasn't fine at all. Because I kept replaying that last night in the backyard. The way Evan leaned into my touch. The way he whispered, safe. The way it all shattered the second Claire opened that door. I tried to convince myself I had imagined the whole thing. That maybe it was all just a phase. A strange, blurry moment of misplaced emotion. But my heart wouldn't stop looking for him in every corner of the house. And some nights, I swore I could still feel him sitting beside me in the dark. The 12th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to his dad's place. It was 2 towns over. Evan had mentioned it once, offhand, during a late-night garage conversation. I had no real plan. I just knew I needed to see him, to know he was okay, to know we weren't some forgotten ghost of a feeling I should have buried and moved on from. I pulled up to the modest blue ranch-style home and sat in the car for 10 minutes, debating whether I was insane. Then the porch light flicked on. He stepped out, barefoot, in sweatpants and a baggy hoodie. He stared at me like I was either a dream or a mistake. Maybe both. I got out slowly. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. We just stood there, letting the silence stitch itself between us again, tighter this time, sadder. Then he said quietly, "You shouldn't be here." I nodded. "I know." He looked away. "She told me you were done with me." My heart twisted. "That's not true." "She said you were trying to fix things with her, that I was just a distraction." "She lied." He exhaled shakily. I wanted to believe that. I stepped forward. Evan, Don't, he cut in. Don't say you're sorry unless you mean it. I'm not sorry. I whispered. That's the problem. He closed his eyes like he was holding back something sharp. Then, I thought leaving would make it easier. Safer. For both of us. Did it? I asked. He shook his head. No. He invited me in. His dad wasn't home. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and old photos. We sat on the edge of his bed, a small twin pushed into the corner. He looked smaller in this room, younger, vulnerable. But when he looked at me, something else flickered there too. I didn't come here for anything physical, I said. He nodded. I know. I needed to see you, to tell you you're not crazy, that I felt it too, and that I still do. His eyes welled up, but he didn't look away. Do you ever feel like no matter how much you want something, it'll always end in guilt? I swallowed. All the time. He whispered. Then why are you still here? I gave the only answer I had. Because leaving you hurt worse than staying ever could. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. We just lay back, side by side, staring at the ceiling. His breathing slowed. Mine did too. And for the first time in almost 2 weeks, I felt okay. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Because even as the peace returned, I knew we were walking a line we couldn't hold forever. Eventually something or someone would push us, and we'd have to decide if we were willing to fall or let go before we did. I left just before sunrise. He walked me out. Before I got in the car, he said, if I come back, I need to know you won't pretend this didn't happen. I looked him in the eyes. I won't pretend, I said, but I also can't promise it won't get harder. I don't need promises, he whispered. I just need the truth. I drove home alone. The road was empty. The world felt still. And I realized then that no matter what happened next, Evan wasn't just a feeling anymore. He was a part of me. And I didn't want to live a life where I had to erase that. When I pulled into the driveway, Claire was standing on the porch. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She just stared at me like she already knew where I'd been. And I knew, in that moment, that the storm I thought we'd avoided was just beginning, to be continued in part 4. Evan's return shatters the calm. Claire has seen too much. And when secrets refuse to stay buried, someone's heart or home won't survive it. She was already waiting on the porch when I pulled in. Claire, barefoot, with a coffee mug in hand that probably didn't hold coffee. The early morning light hit her hair, just enough to give her the illusion of peace. Like one of those women in a painting who look serene until you stare into the eyes long enough and see the madness underneath. I parked slowly. Got out. She didn't say a word at first. Just watched me with that half smile she used when she was baiting someone. Then finally, long drive. I paused. Yeah, you look tired. I didn't sleep. She took a sip from the mug. Me neither. A beat of silence. I had the strangest dream last night, she said softly, almost like she was telling me a secret. You were with Evan, holding him, like lovers. I didn't move. She didn't blink. You think I'm crazy, don't you? No, I said, I think you're hurting. Oh, she chuckled. Don't give me your therapist's voice. You're not here to fix me. I never tried to fix you. You're right, she said. You just ignored me until I became inconvenient. I started to walk past her, but she stepped in front of me, blocking the door. I saw you, she whispered. I saw how you looked at him. My throat tightened. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, she hissed, voice low now. I know that look. I wore it once when I still believed in people. I opened the door. She let me through, but not without throwing one last sentence over her shoulder. You think you're protecting him? You're not. You're just giving him another reason to believe he's unlovable. For the rest of that day, I didn't see her. She stayed in the bedroom, door locked, phone silent. And I stayed in the kitchen, sitting at the table, trying to decide if I had destroyed everything, or if this had been a slow wreck in motion long before Evan and I ever found the same quiet space. That night, I texted Evan. I'm home. She knows. He replied. She always knew. She just wanted someone else to blame. I stared at the screen for a long time before sending the next one. Do you regret it? It took 10 minutes before the typing bubble appeared. Then, no, but I'm scared. Of her, of what this means. For you, for us, for me. That was the night I realized something important. I wasn't afraid of Claire. I wasn't afraid of being hated. I was afraid that Evan would decide I wasn't worth the trouble, that loving me would hurt too much. 2 days passed. Claire barely spoke. When she did, it was polite, cold, mechanical. She stopped drinking, which, ironically, was the loudest red flag of all. Claire didn't get quiet unless she was planning something. On the 3rd day, I heard her talking on the phone. I didn't mean to listen, but her voice carried. No, he's not his real father. He's just married to me. Yeah, I know. I have proof. I'll send the photos. My stomach dropped. I stepped into the room. She ended the call quickly, turning to me with that same eerie smile, just making sure Evan's safe. You know, from people who cross lines they shouldn't. You're reporting me? She shrugged. You think I won't? I stepped forward. Claire, whatever you think this is, whatever you're trying to do. She cut me off. He's my son, and you're my husband. And the fact that I even have to explain why this is messed up is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. The next hour was a blur. I called Evan, told him not to come back. He sounded confused. What happened? She's trying to ruin us. We're not even. Evan, I said, I need you to promise me you'll stay with your dad until I figure this out. Please. There was silence. Then, I'm not leaving you. This isn't about leaving me, I said. It's about protecting you. I don't want protection, if it means losing you. Please, I whispered. Just trust me. That night, Claire and I had our first real argument. Not yelling, not screaming, but that kind of sharp-edged conversation where every word is a knife. She said I manipulated her son. I said she neglected him. She accused me of chasing youth. I accused her of hating her own reflection. She threw a wine glass at the wall and missed by inches. I stood frozen as the pieces rained down. Then quietly she said, You think he loves you? He doesn't. He's just clinging to the first man who didn't leave. I left. I didn't pack. Didn't grab my keys. I just walked down the street, past the gas station, past the town line. I walked until my feet ached and my lungs burned. I walked until I couldn't hear her voice anymore in my head. I ended up at a small motel on the edge of town, checked in under my middle name, turned off my phone, sat on the bed, and stared at the wall. The weight of it all finally hit me. Not just the guilt, but the loss. Because I knew I couldn't go back to that house again. And I didn't know if I could ask Evan to meet me in the middle of the mess I'd made. The next morning, I turned my phone on. 15 missed calls. 12 texts, all from Evan. The last one said, She told my dad. He's making me pack. Says I have to move to Colorado with him. I don't want this. Please tell me what to do. My hands shook as I typed back. Don't leave. I'm coming. I drove faster than I should have. Didn't care. My heart was thudding the whole time. When I reached his dad's house, Evan was standing on the lawn with a bag in one hand and tears in his eyes. I got out. He ran to me, and in front of God, his father, and the entire neighborhood, he hugged me like he'd been holding his breath for weeks and finally let go. His dad stormed out. You're not taking him anywhere, he growled. He's 19, but I swear I'll get the cops involved. I stepped forward, calm but firm. Evan's legally an adult. He can make his own choices. He's confused. Evan's voice shook. I'm not confused. I'm in love with him. The silence that followed was nuclear. His dad's face turned red. His hands curled into fists. I stood between them. Touch him, I said, and I'll press charges myself. Eventually, he backed down. Evan threw his bag in the car, and we left without looking back. We drove in silence for a while. Then he whispered, "You really came." I looked at him. I never left. He reached for my hand, held it like he'd never get to again. When we got back to town, I didn't take him home. I took him to the motel. We sat on the bed, staring at the floor, knowing that whatever we did next would define everything. He said, "You know this won't be easy." I nodded. "But easy's overrated," I said. "I'd rather have real." He leaned in slowly, and when his lips touched mine, I felt a kind of peace I'd never known. Not lust, not guilt, just truth, quiet and complete. That night, we didn't do anything we'd regret. We just lay there, in each other's arms with the world locked out, because we both knew tomorrow it would all come crashing down. But tonight, we had each other. And maybe that was enough. To be continued in part 5. Now that the truth is out, the consequences begin. The past claws back. And someone close to them is about to cross a line that can't be uncrossed. The next morning, I woke up before Evan did. He was curled against me, breath soft, one hand tucked under his cheek like he was still holding on to some dream that wouldn't survive daylight. I didn't want to move. Didn't want to risk the world crashing back in the moment I did. But the truth was, I couldn't stay there forever. We were in a motel with 2 days left on my booking, and no idea what came next. Still, in that brief hour of silence, I let myself believe it was possible. To have him, to live quietly, to be something other than the villain the world wanted to make me. But peace never stays long when people feel entitled to destroy what they don't understand. At noon, Evan stirred. He blinked slowly, then looked up at me. "You're still here." "Not go anywhere," I said, brushing his hair back. He smiled, that same soft, crooked smile that undid me every time. We ordered coffee from the lobby, watched reruns on mute, laughed when Evan realized I still didn't know how to open the motel's janky microwave. For a few hours, it was almost normal. Almost. Until the knock. 3 slow, deliberate bangs on the door. We froze. Evan sat up, eyes wide. I checked the peephole. Claire. My stomach dropped. She was standing there in her usual sunglasses, holding her phone like a weapon. I cracked the door, but didn't open it fully. "You shouldn't be here." She smiled. "Neither should he." Her voice was cold, precise. "He's not a prisoner," I said. "You don't own him." "I'm his mother." "Then maybe start acting like it." She laughed once, a humorless sound. "You think you've saved him? Tyler, he doesn't love you. He's just broken. And you're the first man who looked at him without disgust." Behind me, Evan stepped into view. "Then why did you—" Claire's face paled slightly. "I begged you to see me," Evan said. "And all you ever did was criticize, ignore, or drink your way through my childhood." "You think I'm a bad guy here?" she asked, voice trembling now. "You made me feel like I didn't deserve love," Evan whispered. "He didn't." She stepped back, stunned. Then her expression hardened again. "You want to burn this family down? Fine. But don't expect me to hand you the match." She turned to me. "You were supposed to make things better." I stared her down. Sometimes better means tearing down a lie. She didn't say another word, just turned and walked away. Evan sat on the bed for a long time after she left, silent. Finally, he said, "She's not going to stop." "I know. She'll make this ugly." "I know that too." He looked at me. "Are you scared?" I nodded. "But I'm more scared of losing what we have." Later that day, I called a friend, someone I trusted, someone who didn't ask too many questions. They had a small cabin up north, tucked between the redwoods outside Mendocino. They owed me a favor. I asked if we could use it for a while. They said yes. We left that evening. No dramatic escape. No running from police. Just 2 people in a quiet car, driving toward the only kind of peace we might be allowed to have, even if it was temporary. The cabin was small, dusty, and smelled like cedar. Evan loved it. He threw his bag down and opened every drawer like a kid discovering a new planet. We lit the fireplace, ate gas station snack for dinner, fell asleep on the couch with our legs tangled and the fire still crackling. That first week in the cabin was the closest thing to joy I'd felt in years. Evan came alive out there. He painted on the porch, read books he'd been too anxious to open back home. He even taught me how to cook something other than microwave noodles. And for the first time, I saw what he looked like without fear. But of course, real life doesn't disappear. Not forever. One afternoon, while Evan was sketching in the sun, my phone buzzed. A private number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Tyler? This is Officer Whitmore, Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. We received a report. Are you traveling with Evan Ridley? My blood turned to ice. Yes, I said slowly. He's my stepson. We've had a complaint filed. Allegations of coercion and improper conduct. We're obligated to follow up. Can you both come to the station for a brief chat? My voice cracked. Is this from Claire? I can't disclose that, but we do want to handle this calmly and respectfully. It'll be quick. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed. Evan walked in seconds later, holding a pine cone and grinning like a child. His smile faded instantly. What happened? I told him. Every word. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, she'd rather destroy me than admit she lost. We went to the station the next morning, voluntarily. They were surprisingly kind. Asked questions. Took notes. Evan was clear. Nothing illegal happened. He was an adult. Everything was mutual. Still, they had to file it. An open report. A mark on my name. Not a conviction. But something that could follow me forever. That night, back at the cabin, we sat in silence. He finally said, "You still want this? After everything?" I turned to him. "I don't want anything else." He reached for my hand, held it like he meant it. To be continued in Part 6. A case is opened. A mother digs deeper. And Evan begins to uncover a secret of his own, one that changes everything about why he came back. We thought we were safe again, even with the police visit. Even with Claire's report hanging over us like a storm cloud, the cabin had become a kind of emotional sanctuary. We filled our days with small things, grocery runs, board games, cooking experiments that ended in laughter. Nights were quiet, full of whispered talks in bed and forehead kisses that said more than any vow ever could. But I should have known peace never lasts when people are determined to unearth your past. And Evan? He found more than either of us were ready for. It started with a trip back to the house. We needed documents, passports, bank statements, my laptop, some of his art supplies. Claire had texted me once, telling me she boxed everything up. But I didn't trust her, and Evan insisted on going with me. "Part of me still wants to see it," he said, "even if it hurts." I wasn't sure if that was brave or reckless. Maybe both. We arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd grown. The windows were shut, curtains drawn. Her car was in the driveway. Evan unlocked the door with the spare key from the flower pot. Same one Claire always forgot was there. Inside, it smelled of lavender candles and wine. The living room was spotless. Too spotless. Like someone had cleaned it for a showing, not for living. Boxes lined the hallway. Most had our names scribbled on them in permanent marker. Evan started going through his, carefully opening each one like a memory might bite him if he rushed. I went upstairs for my laptop. That's when I heard him call out, "Tyler, come here." His voice was quiet, but tight, like a string pulled too tight, 1 second away from snapping. I found him in Claire's walk-in closet. He was holding a shoebox. Inside it, old photos, letters, documents. One was addressed to my son when he's ready to know. I blinked. "What is this?" He sat on the edge of her bed and opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated nearly a decade ago. The writing was undeniably Claire's. "Evan, if you're reading this, I'm probably not brave enough to say it out loud. Or maybe you found out another way. The truth is, your biological father isn't who you think he is. I had a brief relationship before I married David. He didn't know about you. He still doesn't. I wanted to protect you from his world, from mine. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe I took something from you that you deserved. His name is Tyler Bennett. The air left my lungs. I stepped back like I'd been punched. Evan sat frozen, mouth slightly open. He read it again, and again, then looked up at me. Is this true? My voice didn't come right away, because my thoughts were screaming. This has to be a lie. She's manipulating us. This is her final card. But deep down, I already knew. I sat beside him, body numb. I didn't know. I whispered. He blinked slowly. You're my father? I don't know, I said, shaking my head. It can't be. It can't. She would have told me. Claire never kept. But I stopped because that wasn't true. Claire kept everything that gave her control. He read the rest of the letter in silence. It didn't give much else, no timeline, no DNA proof. Just guilt, layered in ink, tucked away in a box of shame and secrets. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. So what does this mean for us? I didn't have an answer, because every part of my body wanted to scream no, not because I didn't believe the letter, but because what we had built, every tender moment, every night of healing, every gentle word, had been rooted in something we thought was safe, something we thought wasn't broken. I stood. I need air. He didn't stop me. I stepped out onto the porch and sank into the old wooden chair. The sky was gray, a storm building somewhere over the hills. And in my chest, the same thing. 15 minutes later, Evan stepped outside. He sat beside me, hands folded in his lap. We didn't look at each other for a long time. Then he said, if it's true, everything we did, everything we felt, does that make us disgusting? I turned to him sharply. No, don't say that. We didn't know. He blinked fast. But we do now. The pain in his voice was unbearable. I reached out, but he pulled away, not out of hate, out of something worse. Shame. I need to know the truth, he whispered. I need to know who I am. That night, we didn't go back to the cabin. We drove 3 hours to a friend of mine who worked in a clinic. We submitted DNA swabs. Did everything by the book. It would take days to get results. But those days stretched like knives across our chests, because between every hour, every conversation, was a question neither of us could say out loud. What if this love was never allowed in the first place? We stayed in a rental apartment while we waited. Separate rooms. We didn't touch, didn't sleep, barely ate, but the silence wasn't cold. It was mourning, like grieving something we hadn't buried yet, but knew we might have to. The results came on a Thursday. The envelope arrived in a plain white package. Evan held it. He looked at me. Open it, I said. I can't. Then I will. My hands shook as I ripped it open. I scanned the page. And then I exhaled. Hard. Tears sprang to my eyes. Because the result read, probability of paternity, 0%. I looked at Evan. He stared at me, not understanding at first. Then his voice broke. You're not my father? I laughed. Not from joy, but from the weight of it all releasing at once. No, I'm not. He covered his face, crying hard now, not from disappointment, not from confusion, but from relief. I pulled him into my arms. This time, he didn't pull away, and in the quiet that followed, we finally let ourselves breathe again. We weren't broken. We weren't monsters. We were just two people who found light in each other's darkest places, and almost lost it to someone else's lies. To be continued in part 7. Now that the truth is out, Evan must confront his mother one last time. But the final confrontation brings out a secret she's kept buried even deeper, one that could ruin them both for good. Evan was quiet in the passenger seat. We had the DNA test in my glove box, printed, stapled, clear as day. Probability of paternity, 0%. But he hadn't stopped trembling since we left the clinic, not because of relief, not even anger, but because something inside him had cracked the moment the truth came out. And it wasn't about me not being his father. It was about why she told him I was. You think she actually believed it? He finally asked. I kept my eyes on the road. I think Claire believes whatever keeps her in control. He exhaled hard, leaning his head back. God, I wanted it to be true for half a second. Isn't that sick? It's not sick, I said. It means you want to belong somewhere. To someone. He looked at me. Is it messed up that I was disappointed when I read 0%? I glanced over. No, it just means you care about me. That's not wrong. He nodded slowly, then whispered, I want to confront her. I pulled into a gas station and turned off the engine. You sure? He looked at me, jaw clenched. She lied to both of us. That doesn't get to go unspoken. I hesitated. You know she'll spin it, twist it, use anything she can to make you doubt yourself again. I don't care, he said. I'm not walking away without telling her I know. He stared out the window, then added, and that I'm done being afraid of her. We got to the house just after 6 p.m. The sun was setting behind the roof. Claire's car was in the driveway. The porch light was already on, a soft glow that once meant welcome, but now felt like a trap. Evan walked ahead of me, his shoulders stiff, his steps measured. He didn't knock. He just opened the front door and stepped inside. The house smelled like candles again, like she was trying to cover something up, maybe herself. She was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables, like she hadn't rewritten her son's identity last week. She turned, startled. Oh, you're back. Her smile faded when she saw Evan's face. Then her eyes slid to me and darkened further. You brought him. I brought the truth, Evan said. She set the knife down carefully. What truth? Evan pulled the paper from his jacket pocket and slid it across the counter. Her eyes scanned the top, then the result, then stopped moving. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there like someone had shattered her favorite mirror. You lied to me, Evan said, to both of us. She finally picked up the paper and folded it once, like she was filing it away in her mind. I was angry, she said softly. I wanted to punish him. Evan's voice cracked. So you told me the man I love might be my father? Claire leaned back against the fridge. He isn't, though. So what's the harm, really? That made my blood boil. The harm, I snapped, is in the trauma. The sick mind game. You made him question everything good in his life. She laughed once, brittle and bitter. I made you both question it because it was never supposed to happen. She stepped forward, pointing at Evan. You're my son, and you gave your heart to my husband. Then at me, you were supposed to be the adult, the protector, not the participant. I took a deep breath. I didn't go looking for this. Neither did I, Evan whispered, but it saved me. Claire's eyes welled up. For a second, she looked human, and then she said, You think this is the worst thing I've done? You have no idea. The room went cold. Evan blinked. What are you talking about? Claire walked to the liquor cabinet, poured herself something brown and strong, and downed it like water. Then she looked at Evan, straight in the eye. You were never supposed to be born. The silence was deafening. What? Evan's voice broke. She kept going, like she'd been holding it in for years. I was 19. He was 33. A married man. Said he'd leave his wife for me. I was stupid. Drunk most nights. I thought I was in love. Who? Evan whispered. She laughed again. You don't want to know. Tell me? She stared into her glass. Your father was my boss. At the restaurant where I waited tables. He told me to get rid of you. Said you'd ruin everything. I almost did. She set the glass down slowly. But when you were born, you had his eyes. And I hated you for it. Evan looked like he'd been stabbed. He stumbled back a step, breath shallow. I was a baby, he whispered. I know. You held that against me? I had no one, she said, louder now. No support. No money. And then David came along. Safe, boring David. And later, Tyler. She looked at me again. I married you because you made the house feel less empty. Not because I loved you. And when Evan started looking at you, like you were the one keeping him alive, she wiped a tear. I couldn't take it. I was already forgotten. I stepped between them. Evan doesn't owe you the love you never gave him. I gave him everything, she screamed. No, Evan said from behind me. You gave me shame. And silence. And nights locked in my room while you drank yourself unconscious. Her lips parted. Her hand trembled. I'm sorry, she said finally. I was broken. So was I, Evan said, his voice cracking. But I didn't break anyone else to feel better. The three of us stood in that kitchen, the battlefield where our family finally fell apart. Then Evan took my hand. I'm leaving, he said. She didn't stop him, but her voice followed us out. You think this ends with you walking away? You'll come back. You always do. We didn't answer. We just walked. Back to the car. Back to something we could choose for ourselves. Back at the cabin that night. Evan barely spoke. I made us tea. Lit a fire. He stood by the window, staring out at the woods. Finally, I stepped behind him and wrapped my arms around his waist. He leaned back against me, closing his eyes. I was afraid this would ruin us, he whispered. I kissed the side of his head. It didn't, because what we have isn't built on our lies. He turned in my arms, looked at me like I was home, and finally said, I'm ready to stop running. We slept in the same bed that night, not afraid, not ashamed, not because we were hiding from something, but because we were finally choosing it out loud. To be continued in Part 8. With the truth out, Evan begins healing. But Claire isn't done yet, and one final act of desperation could put everything they built at risk. A choice must be made. Protect love or protect peace. The days after that confrontation passed slowly, but they passed. Evan and I stayed in the cabin, tucked away from the noise and the weight of the world. We cooked every meal together. He painted more brighter colors now. I read to him at night while he rested his head on my chest. It was peace. Earned, not borrowed. But peace is a fragile thing, especially when it was never yours to begin with. It happened one afternoon. I had just stepped out to the general store, a tiny roadside shack 10 minutes in the cabin, to pick up eggs, flour, and a bottle of wine for dinner. Evan was home alone, sketching on the deck. When I returned, the front door was wide open. Panic stabbed through me. Evan. No answer. I dropped the groceries and bolted inside. The living room was undisturbed. So was the kitchen. Then I saw it, the note on the coffee table. One word, scribbled in a messy scrawl. Sorry. My chest collapsed in on itself. I called his phone, straight to voicemail. I called again, and again, still nothing. That silence. It was worse than anything Claire had ever said. I called his father. No, Evan hadn't come there. I called the police. No incident reports, no hospital admittance. It was like he had vanished, and all I had was that note. By nightfall, I sat in the dark cabin alone. My mind kept replaying every conversation from the last few weeks. Was I too slow? Too selfish? Did Evan look at me and see a mess, just like the one he tried to escape? Or worse, did Claire come back? The next morning, I got a message. Blocked number. No ID. Just a photo. Of Evan. Sitting on a couch. Looking small. And beside him, Claire. I didn't hesitate. I drove 4 hours straight back to town. Claire's apartment wasn't where she used to live. She had moved into a short-term rental complex across town. Modern, sterile. Perfect for someone who wanted to disappear into something new. I found her door, knocked once. She opened it. She looked calm, too calm, like someone who'd won. He's sleeping, she said. Why did you take him? I didn't take him, she said, leaning on the doorframe. He came. I stepped inside. Evan was curled on the couch under a blanket, eyes closed, breathing soft. You drugged him. I snapped. She raised a brow. He had a panic attack. I called urgent care. They gave him a sedative. He's fine. Claire. She held up a hand. Before you accuse me of kidnapping, maybe ask why he came back. I turned to Evan. His eyes fluttered open. When he saw me, he sat up slowly. Tyler. I'm here, I whispered, rushing to his side. What happened? He looked down. I called her. I didn't know what else to do. I felt like I couldn't breathe. You could have called me. I didn't want you to see me like that. Claire watched from the kitchen like she wasn't part of the scene, like she was the audience. Evan looked at me, eyes glassy. I was painting, and suddenly everything hit me again. The lies, the almost, the fear that I'll ruin everything. You didn't ruin anything, I said gently. He swallowed. I love you, but I don't know who I am without her damage in my head. Claire poured herself coffee. See, she said, sipping. He came to me because he still needs his mother. Evan shook his head slowly. I came here because I forgot what it felt like to be safe. But then you reminded me. Claire narrowed her eyes. You're not thinking clearly. No, he said, standing. For the first time I am... He walked to me, took my hand, and turned to her. You don't get to manipulate me anymore. Her smile faltered. Evan, no, you used love as a weapon for too long. And I let you, but I'm done. She set her mug down with force. You really think he's your salvation? He was my husband. Evan squeezed my hand. No, he was just the first person who saw me, and didn't look away. We left without another word. Back to the cabin. Back to something quiet. This time, Evan didn't hide. He cried, hard, loud, curled into my chest like a child learning how to be safe again. I held him through all of it, through the shaking, through the apologies, through the fear that he'd never be whole. You're not broken, I told him. You were just never allowed to heal. A few days later, we both met with a therapist. Evan found one who worked specifically with survivors of emotional abuse. He started going twice a week. Some days he came home lighter, others quieter, but he never pulled away. And I never stopped holding space for him. One night, weeks later, we sat by the fire. He turned to me and asked, if you could go back, would you change anything? I stared into the flames. No, I said, even the hard parts led me to you. He nodded slowly, then whispered, I think I want to paint us. I smiled. Go ahead, make us a masterpiece. That night, he started sketching the outline of two men standing at the edge of a broken house. Flames behind them, stars ahead. And I realized that maybe we'd never live a normal love story. But we were building something stronger than that. A truthful one, to be continued in Part 9. Healing begins. But when Claire delivers a final ultimatum, one that could change Evan's future forever, he must choose whether to cut ties completely or risk losing everything he's worked so hard to rebuild. It was a Sunday morning when the envelope arrived. No return address, just Evan's name, handwritten in delicate script on the front. He opened it slowly. His hands trembled before he even saw what was inside. I watched him from across the kitchen, my coffee untouched. He pulled out a single piece of paper and read it silently, his eyes scanning fast. Then stopping cold. He read it again, then looked up at me. She wants me to come back. Claire's letter was short. Too short for someone who claimed to be a mother making amends. Evan, I know you think I'm the villain. Maybe I am, but there's more to our story than you know. I've spoken to a lawyer. If you come back, there are things that belong to you. Things I've kept safe all these years. But you have to come alone. One night. That's all I ask. I promise after that, I'll leave you alone forever. Nam. I sat across from him. She's baiting you. I know, he said softly. But you're thinking of going. He didn't deny it. That day was heavy. He didn't speak much. He took long walks outside the cabin, often barefoot on the damp grass, staring out into the fog that hung between the redwoods. I knew what he was really walking through, the weight of choice. That night, as we lay in bed, he finally said, if I don't go, she wins. She'll always have the power of mystery. She'll always say, there was something you didn't know. I nodded, heart pounding. I understand. He turned to face me in the dark. If I go and she tries anything, I'll be right there, I said. He smiled faintly. No, I need to do this alone. The next evening, he left, not with anger, not even fear, but with purpose. She lived in a different place now. Not the apartment from before. Not the house we all shared. She'd moved into a small cottage outside town, just isolated enough to feel like control. He said she opened the door as if she'd been waiting at the window the whole time. She made tea, sat him on the couch, didn't raise her voice, didn't pour a drink, didn't lash out. Instead, she pulled out a box, smaller than the one that held that lie about me being his father, but heavier somehow. Inside it, a faded hospital bracelet with his name, a birth certificate, a letter from his birth father, and a will. Claire was dying. She had been diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma months ago. She hadn't told anyone, not out of strength, out of pride. "You were always going to leave me," she told him. "I just didn't want to see it happen before I was gone." He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just sat there, absorbing her words like they were knives he expected. Then she gave him the will. He was the sole inheritor of everything. "I don't want your money," he said. "It's not about money," she replied. "It's about legacy." "You mean guilt?" She didn't deny it. Then came the ultimatum. "If you stay, just until the end, you get everything. Not just the house, the savings, the land, the legal freedom to choose what your story becomes. If you leave now, I rewrite the will. You get nothing." That's when Evan called me. From the porch. Late at night. Voice flat. "She's doing it again," he said. "She's giving you a price tag." I thought knowing she was dying would make this easier. "And does it?" There was a long pause. "No," he whispered. "It makes it harder." He came home the next morning. Tired. Pale. I wrapped him in a blanket and sat with him in silence while he sipped coffee. "I don't care about the will," he said. "I know, but I do care about the ending." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He set the mug down and met my eyes. "I want her to die knowing I forgave her, but also knowing she never controlled me again." He returned to her house a week later. Not to stay, just to talk. He held her hand. He said the word she never earned. "I forgive you." Then he walked out. Didn't even take the box. She died 12 days later. Evan didn't attend the funeral. He wrote a letter instead and had it placed in her coffin. "You've hurt me deeply, but I won't carry your shame anymore. I'll carry my own name with peace." The lawyer called him later that week. She hadn't changed the will. He was the sole inheritor after all, but he declined most of it. Sold the house, donated the money, kept only the land where he said he wanted to build something new. That night, he curled into bed beside me. He looked older, not in age, but in soul. He whispered, "I'm ready to start again." And I said, "We already did." To be continued in Part 10. The past has been put to rest. Now, Evan and Tyler finally get to build something new, but an unexpected guest arrives, bringing one last twist that could threaten the fragile life they've built. 6 months passed. 6 whole months without drama, without Claire, without doubt clawing at our backs. Evan and I bought a small piece of land from the inheritance. He insisted on it. It wasn't about money. It was about grounding. He said, "If I build something real with you, I want the ground beneath us to be mine. Chosen, not inherited." We designed a tiny cabin together. Open windows, soft light, skylight above the bed, so we could watch the stars. He started painting again, not to escape, but to remember who he was before everything got buried. I opened a small online business, working from home, consulting for nonprofits. Simple, honest work. For the first time, it felt like a life worth calling ours. Then came the knock. A quiet one. Mid-morning. I was folding laundry. Evan was out back sketching under the sycamore tree. I opened the door, and there he was, a man, older than me by maybe 10 years, wearing a clean gray jacket, eyes sharp, like he was used to being noticed. "Tyler Bennett?" he asked. "Yes." "I'm looking for Evan Ridley." I felt something shift in my chest. "Who are you?" He hesitated, then said, "I'm his father." I didn't let him in. Not right away. Instead, I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. "You're what?" "Claire's mystery man, the one she never named." His jaw tightened. "Yes." I thought you didn't want anything to do with him. He looked away for a second. I didn't know he existed. Claire said you told her to get rid of the baby. His eyes snapped back to mine. She never told me she was pregnant. I narrowed my eyes. Convenient. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper. It was a letter, dated 24 years ago. Claire's handwriting. It read, I'm keeping him. I won't tell you where. Don't come looking. You've made your choice. Goodbye. I scanned it twice. It felt real. I still didn't trust him. But something in his voice, in his posture, in his hesitation. He didn't seem like a man chasing redemption. He seemed like a man chasing answers. Evan walked around the corner, wiping paint from his fingers. He stopped cold when he saw the man. The resemblance was faint, but unmistakable. The same jawline, the same eyes. The man's voice softened. Evan didn't respond, just stared, frozen. Then, quietly, You left her? I didn't know, the man said. Sure, I'm not here to fix anything. I just wanted to see you. Evan's arms hung by his sides. Not clenched, not crossed, just open, vulnerable. You're late, he said. I know. They sat outside under the sycamore for over an hour. I watched through the kitchen window. I didn't listen. It wasn't my story to hear. When Evan came inside, he was quiet. I braced myself. Then he looked at me and said, He didn't run. She pushed him away. I nodded. You believe him? I don't know, Evan said, but I don't feel the hate I thought I'd feel. Then he reached for my hand. He wants to come back next week, just to talk again. And what do you want? He paused. Closure, but on my terms this time. That night, we lay in bed staring at the ceiling through the skylight. Evan whispered, Do you think healing ever ends? No, I said, but I think it changes shape, like grief. He turned to me. And love. I smiled. Love doesn't end. It just deepens. We kissed under that endless sky. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt full. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Evan humming. He wore one of my oversized hoodies, barefoot, hair messy from sleep. He turned when I entered the kitchen and grinned. Good morning, future husband. I blinked. What? He pulled something from his pocket. A ring. Simple. Silver. Handmade. Probably by him. I figured I've given you enough reasons to run. How about I give you one to stay forever? I didn't cry. I laughed, then kissed him, so hard I knocked over the syrup. Yes, I whispered. Yes, always. To be continued in part 11, the final chapter, a wedding, a father's return, and a truth that wraps everything full circle. The story ends, but the love, the real love, is just beginning. We didn't plan a big wedding. We didn't want glitz or velvet chairs or 300 guests watching us cry. What we wanted was meaning. So we married in the redwoods, right by the cabin, right where Evan first told me he didn't feel afraid anymore, where I learned that love doesn't always come with permission. Sometimes it demands courage instead. The ceremony was quiet. A few close friends. His father, now visiting regularly. My sister. No Claire. Just the trees, the wind, the sound of Evan's heart beating under his pressed linen shirt as he held my hand. He wrote his vows by hand and read them with a voice that trembled at the edges. I thought love was supposed to be perfect. Clean. Easy. But then I met you in the middle of my worst year, and you didn't try to fix me. You stayed. You waited. You saw me. Today I marry you because you are my peace, my fire, my reason to never run again. I barely got through mine. I said, There's no word big enough for what you are to me, but if I had to choose just one, it would be home. We kissed under the canopy of trees that had seen every part of our pain, and in that moment, they bore witness to our joy. Afterward, we danced in the field, shoes off, laughing, spinning like children. No photographers, no announcements, just love, the way it was meant to be, raw, honest, free. That night, by the fire, we sat wrapped in a blanket and watched the stars. Evan leaned on my shoulder and whispered, "Do you ever think about how we started?" I smiled. "All the time." He chuckled. "I mean, I literally moved into your house after your husband cheated on you, and I was your stepson." "You weren't," I said. "Not really, but still." He turned to me, serious now. "You loved me before it made sense." "I loved you because it made sense," I replied. He kissed me softly. No heat, no urgency, just love. "I'm not broken anymore," he whispered. "No," I said. "You're whole. You always were." In the weeks after the wedding, life slowed. We built shelves for his paints, started a garden, adopted a rescue dog named Maple who followed Evan everywhere like she'd been assigned to protect his joy. His father came by once a month, slowly rebuilding trust with small actions, not promises. And Claire, she stayed gone, but her shadow didn't. One afternoon, Evan stood in the studio holding a blank canvas. I found him there, still a stone. He looked at me and said, "I want to paint the truth." And he did. A massive canvas. 2 figures standing in firelight, surrounded by trees. One offering a hand, the other reaching out. Not saved, not sainted, but seen. We hung it above the fireplace. A reminder that love isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing someone even when the world says you shouldn't. A year later, we hosted a retreat on our land for queer youth escaping broken homes. Evan taught art therapy. I gave talks on resilience. One boy, maybe 17, asked, "Do you ever regret how it all happened?" Evan smiled. "No, because it gave me the life I was always meant to live." Now, when people ask how we met, we smile and say, "It's complicated." But the truth? It's not complicated at all. We were 2 people who found love where no one thought it should exist, and we proved them all wrong.